Welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time in joining me, thank you for joining me. Please do like, subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. I hope you enjoyed the last little sequence if you've been here for a while. It was quite a tough one on the shoulders and the core. We are going to be moving a little bit more hippie and thigh direction next. So we're going to start off with Pigeon Pose and some variations of getting it into Pigeon Pose. Okay. So I know that Pigeon Pose is quite difficult for a lot of people, so I'm going to give a variation that I use in Yin, Deer Pose, which is much more accessible, just as an example of a place to go before going into your Swan Pose or your Pigeon Pose, sorry. So Deer Pose, start with the right because we are in a Yang practice. So you kind of want to use the mat as a reference point, as grid reference. So your right shin would be square to the top of the mat. You may need to lean off to the right side, but your right shin square to the top of the mat. Your left shin is square down the side of the mat. Sometimes it's good. You can just put a block between the foot and the knee so you know that your shin and your thigh run parallel. Okay, this makes a huge difference. If that foot comes back here, you've got loads of space to fold over that way. When you have these right angles at the knees, that little stopper there, you've got much more resistance going that way. So you really start to feel it more directly into that right hip. It's just an option to have that support there. Anything will do. You might find that you need to be off to the left side because you've got a tight hip here. So you've got internal rotation of the left hip, you've got external rotation of the right hip here. And what we're after with Deer Pose is you've got full range, you're in full control. Deepest variation is your chest on the ball of that foot. Now I'm not expecting you to get there at all. But what we can do is we can move the hands around. Maybe we stay high, maybe this is far enough for you. It's an option. You might be able to drop down to the elbows or take the arms out in front and soften down. But anywhere in this whole range, I kind of liken it to one of those colour charts you get on the PC, where you can kind of move the ball around the colour chart and find where you want to be for that specific colour. It's kind of like that. Anywhere from here down to there that you feel it, anywhere around this right thigh, anywhere into that right hip particularly. The higher up you are, the more you're going to probably feel internal rotation, a little bit of compression into this left hip here. But what we're targeting is the right hip, external rotation around that right thigh. Okay, so finding a point that's accessible to you with these right angles at the hips and at the knees, 90-90. And we just drop into this here. So this is a much more accessible variation of Pigeon Pose or Swan Pose if you're dropping into Yin. It's kind of an access point where you can really open up into the hips without getting so deep into it. And obviously, if you're doing a Yin variation, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever's available for you, move the body, get into the point that's accessible. Obviously, you just swap around, do the same thing on the other side. Explore. Expect it to be different one side to the other. It's perfectly normal, perfectly natural for one hip to be tighter or looser than the other. So just find that range, find what you're after, and drop into that. So if you do struggle with your Pigeon Pose in Vinyasa Yoga, Hatha Yoga, this is a good access point to drop into. You can do it, I normally teach it in Yin. Very rarely in Vinyasa, but it is an option in Vinyasa. If you can't do the pigeon, you can just drop into this. It's a little bit more clunky to get in and out of, but listen to your body. That's what it's about. Clunk is irrelevant when you're tuning into your body. Okay? So, nice accessible position for people that struggle with pigeon, tight hips, arthritic hips, for example. Really good one. So that's a base point to start off with if you want to play around with that. Then we're going to move into Pigeon Pose, okay? So, normally come into it from downward dog, normally, but you can come in from tabletop or any other way really. I normally come in from downward dog and bring the right knee up to the right wrist. Shift the weight a little bit off to the right side and pull the right foot round towards the top of the mat. See, mine's almost parallel to the top, but when I soften into it, the foot slides back. So I'm more 45-degree angle. Some people stay 90 degrees. It's what we're after over time, getting the foot up the top. But listen to your body. Left foot, if we can, shuffle it back a little bit. So we're drawing the hips down towards the floor. Untuck the toes. Then maybe we're dropping down to the elbows. Maybe this is way more. We want to have the right sit bone off the floor. I'll spin round and show you in a minute that. But we don't want to be sitting down to the right sit bone, so we're not off to the side. We want to try and stay central through the mat. It's an option. Blocks underneath the rib cage there. It's quite good. Adds a little bit of support if you're dropping down. If you're dropping the forehead to the floor, take the arms out in front. Soften to the hips. A little bit of support underneath that rib cage. So that support underneath the rib cage stops you from falling this way. And I'll show you the other side on the hip next time. This is what we're after, somewhere here. You might find that the foot's further back. Again, if it's too shallow an angle, then you really want to just come back to your deer pose, okay, and explore this. And get the hip opened up here, and then you can come into your deer pose here. Because if you're here, you're not getting anything in the external rotation of the hip, okay? So if you find that you're kind of here and it's real tough, just come back to your deer pose. Get used to that, get softened into that, let the hip open up. I do have a 12-minute, I think, sequence for hip opening. I'll put the doodah up there. It's a nice little sequence. You can just literally sit in front of the TV and just do some funny things. It's quite an interesting little sequence. Learnt in India. But yeah. So that's your pigeon pose. We'll do King Pigeon next, but we're just working with pigeon at the minute. Dropping down to the forearms, or slide the arms out in front, forehead to the floor. Okay. Coming out, tend to walk the hands back, tuck the left toes, press back. Nice little pad of the heels. Just observe the difference between the right and the left side. It's a little bit of abdominal engagement, but again, I've got a tutorial for down dog. Not too worried about that. And then bringing left knee to left wrist. Bring the left foot up towards the top of the mat. You can literally manhandle the foot up. Then see if you can shuffle the right foot back. This draws the hips down towards the floor, maybe getting into the front of that right hip flexor here. Okay, so that back leg, you've got a potential stretch across the quad and the hip flexor. So this is what I'm talking about here. We don't want the left sit bone on the floor. Don't want the bum on the floor here. We want to come back to center. If it helps, something underneath just to support. So we're not wedging, so we're up, just to support that we can relax. The tendency is, what I used to do is engage my core. So I used to engage my core and lift the hips up. So I was holding tension all the way around the hips, all into the back, because it was tough on my hips. But the more I started to soften into it, the more I started to relax, the more the hip opened up. And then you find that softness, that little bit of squidgy belly, a little bit of softness in the hips, and then just bringing support underneath here. It just stops you rolling off to the side. So you may even have both, particularly if you're doing a yin variation. You may even have both. It just really allows you to soften into it. Okay. It's a little bit, I teach it anyway, there's a little bit of yin within yang in vinyasa. So I treat it as a little bit of a surrender pose, to be honest with you. I know some people like to keep it yang and keep engagement and really push and force, but I use this as a little bit of surrender. King Pigeon, we might as well just do it now while I'm here. I use this as a little bit more yang. So this is more yang energy in my practices. No right, no wrong. As long as you're not hurting yourself, it's all good. So King Pigeon, you're just literally lifting up. Be mindful of the lower back here. It's quite a lot of lumbar compression. You might find that your hands stay out in front. So reducing that lumbar compression. It's a little bit more weight into that left hip here. But we got the option, depending on what your back is like, you can stack. If you're coming into this upward version, this is where we lift the heart up, so it's a back bend. We touched on some back bends, heart lifts up, shoulders pull back. So shoulder blades retract and draw down the back, heart moves forward and lifts up. So we're lifting up through the heart, softening down into the hips. And if it's way too much on that hip and thigh, you got the pressure through the arms. So you can press into the hands, take the weight off the hips. Okay, so you're finding that point of surrender in the hips and the thighs. If it's too intense and you're clenching into the glute, push into the hands, take some of the intensity off the hip. And then over time you can just start to soften and release. You can see my sit bones pretty much on the floor, not my bum, but my thighs on the floor here, that's fine. It's just got the openness there. And I've got enough of an angle here to still feel a stretch into the glute. So we're not forcing it. Always be mindful around your knees, especially in your King Pigeon, be mindful of your lower back as well. Over time, you might find you can bring the hands to heart. Over time. There's no rush to get anywhere. Okay? So a little bit of softness here. So this is a hip opener. External rotation of the left hip. We're opening up the front right hip flexor here. Also getting lumbar compression. So back bend, heart lifts up. Beautiful. Good. Hope that makes sense. Any questions? Oh, tuck the toes. Don't tuck your toes with questions. Just put them in the comments below. And yeah. Daniel Vad. See you in the next video.